What's going on, everyone? Billy Insider here. Hunter, got Drew with me. Coming off of a split in the London series. Would have preferred if we were able to take that game yesterday, but a little bit of a bullpen meltdown, some poor at-bats throughout the game. One at the end, which was pretty frustrating. But I'm not going to rant about Castellanos too much today. I'm going to try to hold back if I can. But that being said, Drew, we got a split, and we go into the Boston series. Another travel week. I mean, this has just been a lot of travel for this team over the past couple weeks from Colorado to San Francisco. How we feeling coming off of that London series?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you told me going into it we were going to get a split, I'd probably have taken it. I mean, obviously the Mets are not a great team, and you would love to take both games, but it's Major League Baseball, and you're not going to sweep every team you see, regardless of how bad they are. I mean, the Nationals just beat the Braves 3 out of 4, so it's just the way baseball goes sometimes. And the Phillies, it's not like they got blown out in the game that they lost, so it's honestly fine.
Yeah, I'm honestly not too upset about it just because the Phillies have been great. Great baseball teams still lose games from time to time. Also, I know there's a lot of Jose Alvarado hate going around right now. Not hate, but it feels like it's been a little bit egregious the past day or so, and he doesn't deserve that. He's pitched a lot this year already. I think he's going to be fine. And for the most part, he's had scoreless outings. And, I mean, how many appearances over the past year and a half now? That guy is fine. And he has one bad outing, and there's a complete meltdown about how the Phillies need a new closer. And they really he is the closer, but there's really not like a set closer. It's going to be matchup based, and we're also in the regular season too. Like, things are obviously going to be different in the playoffs. But I thought that was a little overreactionary. I think Corey Seidman had a good tweet on like how many scoreless outings he's had over the past 120 or something like that. The guy's still a really, really darn good pitcher, and I honestly I could see a Phantom IL stint for him at some point just to manage his innings a little bit. I think I want to say he's pitched like 28 innings already this year. He pitched 60-something all of last year. So he definitely does need a little bit of a break, but they're going to manage him well. And he's going to be fine by the time we get to October because he's such an important piece. They're not going to just drag him to October with 80 innings under his belt, right? They're going to manage him well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like you said, he's important. And the Phillies the last couple of years, they have managed his innings pretty well. Because last year, I think he went in the IL 2 or 3 times with elbow injury. But I think it was more like a phantom stint than it was anything because he was mostly fine last year other than a couple bad outings. And every reliever is going to have bad outings like he had yesterday. And yesterday felt like his worst one of the year. And unfortunately, it came on national TV against the Mets. But, I mean, other than that, he's been mostly good this year, and he had himself. So that just kind of tells you how good he actually is.
Yeah, and I do want to transition it a little bit to the other guy out of the bullpen who was not very good. Gregory Soto. He has had a really rough year once again, and I think we all thought at certain points he was maybe turning a corner or hopefully starting to turn a corner, and that hasn't happened this year. And we talked during the offseason, Drew, we talked about this, and honestly last year we even talked about it too. It was like, well, you just hope you don't get to the point where you have to use that minor league option. I don't know if right now is that point, but that's not off the table down the road. I think we're headed in that direction right now. I hate to say it. I think Gregory Soto has a lot of talent and a lot of potential. I really do. But the results are the results. And unfortunately, they've been consistent results for some time now. Michael Rucker, I think, just started his Clearwater rehab assignment. Obviously, there's a couple other guys who could probably be in the mix for a roster spot too if he gets sent to AAA. But you would obviously do it with the hope that Soto could rejoin the team later in the year and then be a weapon for you in the playoffs. Similar to the Jose Alvarado story from a couple years ago when he did get sent down and he figured things out with the cutter. We'll see. I don't know what the plan would be for Soto. I don't know if they think it would help very much, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that situation right now.
Yeah, I think kind of like you said, it could be a lot like the Alvarado situation from a couple of years ago where they use it for not as a punishment for being bad, but to go down and figure some things out that he needs to figure out because it seems like so far he's been experimenting with stuff in the major leagues, and that's not always exactly what you want. And especially for a guy like that has pitched at the back end of bullpens and hasn't really done that so far with the Phillies. I mean, he's kind of been one of the last options out of the bullpen for the most part. I mean, there's been times where the bullpen's been thin or whatever certain nights, and he's pitched in important spots. But for the most part, he's been one of the front end guys, not the back end guys. And I think if you could get him to being one of them back end guys again, like he was in Detroit, that would be just so huge for this team. I mean, he has such good stuff, so it would be electric.
Definitely, and especially if it can just be versus a lefty portion of a lineup too. That would be big for them. They could use someone like that because obviously they have two other guys in Strom and Alvarado who, yeah, sure, if you want them to pitch against lefties, they can do it, but they're just really good arms. Like they don't need to be lefty specialists. So if you could have a guy who can just come in to get a portion of the lineup that's maybe more so lefties, that's maybe what his role could be. Obviously, we saw him. He did that versus Matt Olson to get that last out in the 8th inning of Game 4, I want to say it was, and then he gives up back-to-back singles in the next inning, of course. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what the issue is right now with him. And actually, Anthony giving us information he can't be sent down. So I don't know why that is. I'm unsure of all the information behind that. But Anthony is obviously a pretty reliable source on this type of stuff. So that's unfortunate to hear. I don't know really what you do with him at this point. I think you just keep him in the back end of the bullpen and hope he's able to figure some things out by the end of the year. But that's kind of where we're at with him at this point in the season. And we will talk about the rest of the bullpen too, but I do want to talk about Taijuan was actually like okay yesterday, which surprised me, but he was, and it's the Mets. So obviously there's some holes in that lineup too. It's the service time. That's why that makes sense. So someone mentioned that in our comments too, and they thought he maybe didn't have enough service time, but I guess he does, so he can refuse it. So that'll be an interesting situation to see it play out. That is crazy. A week ago. Wow.
Unfortunate. Yeah.
Oh, but, man.
Like I kind of wanted to add like about him a little bit. Like if you think about it, the other best team in the NL, the Dodgers, they have nasty left-handed hitters like Ohtani and Freeman. They're batting right at the top of that lineup. So you need to be able to have 3 or 4 guys that can go out there and reliably get those guys out. And Soto could definitely turn into one of those guys at some point, but right now he's definitely not that. And it would be so like understated, like how big that would be if he could turn into that guy.
For sure. There's going to be nights where some of your guys aren't available. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
You're going to like, he's probably going to have a spot in the postseason. I would have to guess. Like last year, there were a couple spots where he just had to be a guy. So yeah, shout out Anthony for the information there. Great Twitter follow if you guys are on Twitter and want to follow Philly stuff up to date. But Anthony, we got to get you on here sometime too. We'll have to see if we can get that going. But a couple other guys in the comments here too. Nerio all the way from Italy, as always. Appreciate you. And yeah, how do you explain the Walker performance yesterday? Like we were just talking about. I don't know. I don't know if there's really an explanation for it. I don't think it's really sustainable. But the sinker, we were talking about it before the stream started. Like he ran it back in towards or the back door to righties too. Like there were a couple really nice pitches he had yesterday to get a couple guys looking. So I still think there were a number of pitches over the heart of the plate. It is what it is. You're just going to have to live with that. He's your 5th starter. He's not very good, but yesterday he was good.
Yeah, he was actually really good yesterday. And Gregory Soto came in and kind of let him down a little bit. I mean, you got runners on first and second with 2 outs. Like I'd say 80% of the time those runs should not score. And Gregory Soto came in and just kind of imploded, to put it lightly. Sorry.
Say the very least.
yeah, he was definitely a huge letdown yesterday, and you can't have that. You just can't. I mean, obviously every reliever has bad outings and stuff, especially the high velocity guys or whatever it may be. But you got to be able to reel it in a little bit and get 1 out. That's just you got to be better than that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's unfortunate, and like we thought the slide step was starting to help him, which you've mentioned a number of times, Drew, on Soto. It seems like every time we hear there's like a little, I don't know, I don't have like a whole document of all the changes they made. I'm sure they've made some changes, but it feels like every time it feels like something's starting to work out for him, it just takes a wrong turn. So yeah, I mean that's that. And Carter, we hope you have a fun time in Boston. I've only been once to Fenway, but I'm very glad I was able to go. It's a beautiful sight to see when you're on Yawkey Way. And obviously there's some seats that are obstructed that aren't the most beautiful sights to watch a game from, but it's a cool ballpark. It's like you're stepping into baseball history. So I don't know if you've been there before or not, but have fun. But on that note, should we talk about the bullpen a little bit, Drew, and just where we're kind of at trust-wise on certain guys moving forward?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I got this made up, so good little point to hit. I mean, I think there's like probably 3 or 4 guys where you're like at a 9 or a 10 as far as how much you trust them. And Obviously, those guys are probably Hoffman, Alvarado, Strom, and Kerkering right now, at least. And I think Sir Anthony's kind of working his way back into being like a 7 or so. I mean, he's not there yet, but if he
Yep.
can be a 7 or an 8, I mean, that's exactly what you need. I mean, you got to have more than 4 guys. I mean, it's it's not super important because not a lot of bullpens go that deep, but I mean, if the deeper you can go and the more guys you can have that you trust a lot in big spots is obviously the better.
Yeah, correct. I agree with you on the top four guys for sure. And just to go one by one, I guess I'll start us on Alvarado after yesterday. Obviously, not a great outing for him, but I still have a ton of faith in him. I would still put him at a 9, to be honest. The outing it's just going to happen from time to time. It's unfortunate. He couldn't really, it wasn't like he was, they said it on the broadcast, and I completely agree. Like, he wasn't completely missing out of the zone. Like, he had a number of close misses in those at bats too. And if he's pitching a little bit better, maybe he gets some of those calls. I don't know. There were some interesting home plate calls this past weekend in London, but it is what it is, and that's just going to happen. Like, no pitcher is going to be perfect. Even the best of guys, like Josh Hader, never had a 0.0 ERA. It was always in the ones, even at his best too, and he was dominant in certain years. So it's just baseball. And look, I think he's going to bounce back. Like I said, I think he's been used quite a bit this year, and I would expect them to try to manage his innings a little bit too. So as far as like long-term trust goes, I would say I'm still at a 9. If you want to knock it down to an 8 because of yesterday, go for it. I would probably still keep it at a 9 though.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think come the end of the year, he's probably going to be back to being a 10 like he was last year and most of the year before that. The year before that, he was a little bit spotty at times, I think. But last year and the beginning of this year, I felt pretty good about him up until more recently because he's kind of been slipping a little bit. Like the other day, I definitely noticed, or yesterday, I guess it would have been, his cutter. He just could not control it. I don't know what was going on, but it was not anywhere near the zone most of the time, and it was pretty uncompetitive. So if he can figure that back out, I think he'll be fine because his fastball location was actually pretty good yesterday. But if you don't have 2 pitches, it's really hard.
For sure. And I'll go to Hoffman too. I mean, Hoffman right now is like, I don't want to give anyone a 10 just because I don't think there's anyone in this bullpen who I'm like, there's no way that anyone's doing damage. Like, there's no way that they're just going to be completely lights out the rest of the season. And obviously that's no reliever, but my point being is like, you don't have that, like, you have guys who are pretty close, but I don't think you have that Josh Hader Brewers postseason type of guy right now. Or, think of ex closer who was just absolutely lights out. Like, obviously like Brad Lidge, but as far as modern guys go, like, I don't know if you have that guy right now. Hoffman's been pretty close lately though. Like, he had a blip earlier in this year. I think the last time he gave up a run, when was that? I mean, that had to be the one Cardinal series at one point. Like, and he's had dirty innings too, where obviously some of them aren't his runners, but he's had innings where he's created dirty innings for himself, and he's still gotten out of them just because that doesn't seem to phase him at all. He's just so good. Obviously, again, we talk about this all the time. He's got 3 pitches that are all like really, really nasty. They all play well. And that's going to serve him well, regardless of whether he's coming into a dirty inning or not. So I'd probably just go, just to give him some more credit than he does, like, not deserved, but more credit than Alvarado. I'd probably go 9.5 right now if we're going to do halves too. So I probably wouldn't give anyone a 10 right now, but he's as close as it gets.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. And I think I would put him and Alvarado probably in the same tier. I mean, Hoffman, he's been a lot better this year, but he hasn't had that success in the past beyond last year. Yeah. So I think that kind of evens it out a little bit because Alvarado, when he's been in the zone in his career, he's been a really good pitcher, obviously. Right. And it's just he's kind of wild sometimes. And recently it's been worse, I think, than it was in the past. So I think Hoffman, though, I mean, like you said, he has nasty pitches. He has 3 of them. He can get pretty much anybody out. It doesn't really matter who it is. I have pretty much complete confidence in him. So I would just give him a 9 as well.
Sure, and I'll kick it to you for the next 2. And you can start on whichever one you want out of Strom and Kerkering.
Yeah, I think I'll just go with Strom first because that guy is just pretty unreal this year. Right now, I mean,
there's been opportunities for him to break that scoreless streak too, like this past weekend, yesterday, and he just doesn't do it.
Yeah, he's been lights out as lights out can possibly be. And I think right now, if you give him anything but a 10, you're kind of just crazy because he's been so good. And until he starts giving up runs or something like that, it's got to be a 10. And I think probably Rob Thompson feels about the same way right now because he's putting him in any kind of spot that he needs him in, and he comes through. And that's exactly what managers love. It doesn't have to be a closer, it doesn't have to be an eighth inning guy. It just every I need you, go in there and do the job.
We've come a long way from Brad Hand not being able to come in with any runners on to now Matt Strom, who it doesn't matter right, left, bases loaded, no one on. Like, it doesn't matter for him. He's going to go out there and get the out. As evidenced again by Game 4 NLDS last year, when he comes in and closes out the series with no problems after there's already a couple runners on base. I believe it was first and third in that situation, and we were up 3-0. So it definitely got a little bit tight, or maybe it was 3-1. But regardless, Strom, man, I mean, he's been incredible. Again, I'm just not going to give anyone a 10 right now since it's early in the season, and I'm just kind of picky about that. So that's more of a me thing, but he's a 9.5, just like Hoffman right now. And I'd go, if I'm going to be really, really stingy about it, I give him like a 9.75 just to emphasize, like, Hoffman's been really good. Strom has not, like, he's really not had any troubles over the past couple months. Again, he's put some runners on, but he gets out of it every single time and he limits the damage. So credit to him, man. He is just, again, we talk about his deceptiveness all the time. We could talk about him all day. We've talked about his pitching style enough on previous podcasts, but it just goes without saying that since that opening day, he's been dominant. And, I got a lot of text from some friends. People know I'm a Strom guy too, and I know Drew loves Strom too. So I don't know about you. I got some text from some friends after opening day about, oh, classic Strom this, classic Strom that, because he had some haters last year, and I was still defending him on this podcast. But how about classic Strom right now? How about what he's doing as of late? That's what I'll leave it at. But yeah, I love what Matt Strom's doing right now.
Yeah, he's so exciting. I mean, he pitches with that fire that you need coming out of the bullpen, and I think the next guy we're going to talk about, Orion Kerkering, he's kind of developing that. Like, he's kind of getting hyped up a little bit whenever he's striking guys out at the end of the inning and stuff like that. So I think right now I'm going to give Kerkering probably like an 8.5 because
exactly what I have.
Yeah, I just don't trust him as much as the other three, but he is so good. And what he did in London, if he keeps doing stuff like that, it's going to develop into a 9 and then eventually probably into a 10 because, man, he was nasty over in London. And not just that outing, but the outings in the last 2 weeks or so, he's been so good. And he just, even when he puts runners on, it's soft contact, or if he doesn't really walk guys. So I can't say even if it's a walk, but like he's just so dominant whenever he's in the zone and he's throwing his fastball with confidence like he has been. It's unhittable. It really is. He's so good.
Yeah. I want to shout out a friend of the pod, Drew from Westchester, who's on Twitter. I believe he said the Phillies already have their own Mason Miller and Orion Kerkering, which I thought was a good tweet. But seriously, he's been incredible, and it felt like early on, because like he had good numbers early on this season when he came off the IL, but it obviously didn't quite feel like that, right? Like it felt like he was having some struggles. Now it really feels like everyone knows like he's trusting his fastball more, and that's really been a big key to his success. But I feel like he's also locating very well too. And again, we talked about that on Saturday. His Saturday outing was just ridiculous. And if he's going to be able to do that, even just every so often, he doesn't need to be able to paint consistently because his stuff's so good. But when he's going to paint too, he's not going to have any troubles. And I honestly think like with his development, like it's almost like gaining a big time guy at the deadline almost with how he's pitching right now. Obviously the Phillies, like, I don't think this is a surprise to them. So I'm sure for them, it's just like, oh, well, we were hoping that, not hoping, but you know what I mean? Like they were expecting Kerkering to probably reach this at some point this year. And again, if he's going to pitch like this, yeah, that's a guy you're definitely going to trust in the late innings, much more so than you were able to last postseason when he was walking guys. So it's exciting to think about, man. I mean, he's definitely up there in that top 4. And again, like you said, I have him at 8.5 just because we need to see more of it. And we've obviously seen what he can look like when he's not locked in and when he's not pitching well. It's not fun to watch Orion when he's not able to hit the strike zone. So that's really the only concern there. But I'll move us to the other guys. And I think really the next tier is really just Sir Anthony, in my opinion. I kind of see him as the wild card because the only two after that are, we have Turnbull, who's just really, he's not really a bullpen guy, obviously, but he's like a whole other category almost.
Yeah, it would be Ruiz and Soto after that.
Right. And those are really just the depth guys, which we've talked about them a lot. We talked about Soto already too. So I don't know if there's really much to talk about with them. They're just depth at this point, and they're going to have their spots here and there. But I would put Sir Anthony right now I'm probably at a 6.5, and that's trending upward, right? I obviously, and I know he had a really good month of May. I still feel like there's times where he gets away with some mistakes, or a baseball is hit pretty hard, or his slider just isn't quite there some days. I think it's been better for sure, but I still worry about him in certain spots. So I don't quite trust him in those late innings just yet. And even like last year in the playoffs, he didn't give up a run, but it felt like every outing with him was super dicey. And I still feel like there's been a little bit of that this year, but it can't be denied that he's pitching a lot better as of late. So if that trend continues, it's probably going to go up to like a 7.5 and 8 within a month or so. But we will see. We will see. I mean, again, he's a reliever. You're going to have your ups and downs. I'm curious to see if he can continue to build upon this.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm probably around a 6 or 6.5 as well. So I think I would just agree with that. And I mean, we've seen what he can do. We really have. And if he can get back to being what he was in like 2018, I think it was, he was so good. And it's kind of a shame that he's fallen off of that because, man, he was exciting. I wasn't like an avid Phillies watcher all the time back in that time, but like 2019 and on, I've been pretty locked in. And I wish I would have been there for that because it had to have been such a special watch whenever he was at his best.
Yeah, he was fun to watch in those days. And I'm also looking at his game log here too, because he had that month of May and he's pitched well in June so far. And his ERA is just under 5, which doesn't really feel indicative of the year he's had. That's surprising to me. But it's because that one outing against Cincinnati where he gave up the 4 runs was really a killer. He only had 2/3 of an inning in that one. So I think that's definitely inflated his stats a little bit. And he's been much better again over the past month or so. So you can't really look at his numbers and judge off of that right now. But I think with him too, like you even look back at his 2022 season, you know, he hasn't really returned to that 2018 form pre-injury. But if you can you can get him at that 2022 form where he was the guy against Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt in that wild card series. And most of the playoffs, he was one of your guys in those late innings. I think he did give up the run in Game 5 of the NLCS that year, but it was raining. Harper saved the day too, so it was all good. But like, obviously the rain did not help him in that outing. I think that was his only mistake of that whole postseason too. So if you can get him back to even like that form, which there's plenty of time left in the season, he's not going anywhere either. Like he's going to be on this postseason roster no matter what. And I think it's just good for him to finally get some rhythm here. I haven't really been keeping an eye on. I mentioned the pitch clock a lot with him this offseason. Again, I don't know how much of an issue that really was for him or not last year, and obviously he battled injuries too. But I haven't really kept an eye on that this year, so I can't really speak to like if he's adjusted to that or not, or if that was an issue for him early in the year. I don't know. But regardless, I think he's definitely starting to find a little bit of a rhythm. But moving to the other two guys, I'm just going to be quick on them. I'd probably put Soto. Oh man, let me start on Jose Ruiz first. let me think about Soto for a second. I'd probably go like a 5 on Jose Ruiz just because I think he has good stuff. I think he's a pretty good pitcher, but I also just see him as a depth guy. Like I wouldn't want him in too many high leverage spots. So for me, it's kind of like a coin toss. Like you saw, he loaded the bases the other day in the first game of the London series. He got out of it. I just don't know. I don't know how much confidence I have in him in the big moments. And again, like I said, maybe a coin flip's a little disrespectful to him with how good he has been. But again, like we only have so much of a sample size, so I just don't know. And we also don't need him to be that guy either. So unless guys go down, and then with Soto, I'm honestly like, I'd probably give him like a 3.5, and that might be being generous right now, but just because I think he has done it at times before, but he's not doing it right now. So
yeah,
that's really all I got on those couple guys.
Yeah, and I would pretty much agree with you on the numbers as far as like the ratings, like how trustworthy they are right now. But the only thing I'll say about Soto is like he's done it, like we've seen it, and like last year, whenever he was on, he was so dominant, like nobody even touched him. I don't even think people were getting on base against him a lot of the time. But when he was off and missing the strike zone and not throwing strikes, and he was not locating a slider at all last year at points, and I'm not sure why, but his fastball and his slider, they complement each other really well. And if he's not throwing one of them for strikes, you might as well not be throwing either of them for strikes because people aren't going to swing at the slider if you're not throwing your fastball in the zone.
Right.
And like Jose Ruiz, like we've seen him be really good this year, but it's been like 95% in low leverage when it doesn't really matter. And I don't really take that into account a whole lot. Like or I don't take it to heart what he's done, because he would be near the back end of the bullpen if he was that good,
Yeah.
So I'd give him like a 4 probably as far as trust goes, but I mean, he's fine. He's the last guy out of the bullpen.
Right. I'm curious. We haven't seen him for quite some time now. Probably a month and a half. But Junior Marte, with what he did before the injured list, and again, I don't know how he's doing injury wise, but assuming he does come back fully healthy at some point, I'm curious, based off of what we saw this year so far, like what you would put him at on this scale.
Yeah, I would probably put him at like a 5.5, 6 maybe, because he didn't do it long enough. Like, we gave Kerkering a lower rating because he hasn't done it successfully for an extended period of time, and it'd be unfair to rate Marte any higher than like a 5 or a 6 because he's done it very, very, very limited amount of time.
Yeah, I would probably put him at a 5 as well, just because, again, like I said, we need to see more of it. We have other guys who thankfully can do it, but I could see him going up to like a 6.5, 7 if he comes back healthy and finds his groove again. But obviously, like I said, that was assuming he comes back fully healthy, and he may come back fully healed, but he may not come back and just get back into that rhythm right away. So that'll definitely be an interesting case, like what he does when he returns. But I did just want to ask you. I wanted to ask you about him since, we haven't seen him in a while, and it's a shame. He was pitching well, and I really feel bad that he got hurt at that time because he definitely could be useful, and it'd be nice to just see him in some of these spots too.
Yeah, and kind of going to flip the script a little bit here, but speaking of guys that are on their way back, we can talk about Trey Turner a little bit. I mean, it's going to be so huge when they get him back because he is a pivotal part of this lineup, and he was off to an insanely good start to this season. And when Bryce is hitting behind him and Bryce is hot and Trey's hot, it's going to be a scary thing because I don't know how you're going to get those guys out. If you walk them, then you get Bohm coming up with runners in scoring position. So, I mean, you kind of pick your poison with the top of the lineup for the Phils.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you're going to miss is, you've mentioned this a number of times, Drew, Sosa and Stott up the middle is pretty sweet. But Trey still has the range. I mean, he may not have Sosa's glove, but he's still got the range to close that ground. So it's going to be super nice to have him back. I mean, he's a good vibes guy too, obviously. Like, they wouldn't have signed him here for 13 years if he wasn't. And it's just going to be cool to see him back with the guys for one. But like you said, as far as baseball goes, man, what a huge addition to this team. They're already playing really good baseball with Edmundo Sosa playing short and other guys mixing in at different positions right now without him and Marsh on the field. And then you get Trey back, and then Marsh's injury isn't supposed to take that long to recover either. So you're probably going to get both of them back not far off from each other. Wow. Oh, man, this team's going to be – they've already hit their stride a number of times this year, and it's just going to take it to a whole nother level when you have Trey in the 2-hole once again. And we saw how well that lineup moved and how well things flowed on the base paths when you had Trey at 2 and Schwarber leading off. Obviously, Schwarber hasn't quite hit his June. What do you call it? Like, he hasn't hit his June form right now. I am quite surprised. I guess he traded it off a little bit this year because he was more solid in May. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe he gave up June this year, but we'll see. There's still a lot of time left. But
yeah,
point being, with those two guys in the first 2 spots of the order, and then you have again Harper and Bohm behind them, and obviously Bohm's a little cold right now, but it's going to happen. He's a very hot and cold player. You feel very good about those top 4 in the lineup.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And us saying that Trey coming back being huge is not a slight to Edmundo Sosa because, man, he has been so good. And he's definitely earned himself some more playing time down the stretch. And whether that's in left field or right field or whatever it may be, he's going to get more playing time, and he's definitely earned that right. And it's going to be fun to watch because he's been so good.
Yeah, he's going to mix in a decent bit. And obviously you can see, like we talked about the other day, he's been a little overexposed at this point too. But now he's going to go back to probably hitting mostly against lefties like he should be. And that's where he really thrives. So that's exciting, man. It's exciting for sure. But should we talk a little bit on the note of Edmundo Sosa about the bench? Because I think there could be some shakeup there by the deadline. And again, obviously I know we've talked about deadline a lot for being in May and June so far, but point being, I was talking to someone else about, and I think I was talking with you and one of our good friends of the pod about this in our group chat the other day, but I was talking to another buddy about the bench too yesterday. And it is a curious case, man, because I think Cody Clemens, it's unfortunate he got hurt when he did because there was some conversation we had. Oh, do you send him down? I think he was probably getting sent down regardless, but like now He's definitely getting sent down because he's not playing. So that's unfortunate for him. he's still really good depth to have in AAA for the time being. But you look at the rest of the bench, and oh man, I'm looking at the 40 man, and I saw Rodolfo Castro. Wow, that's a name from last year. But
Yeah,
I haven't even checked how he's doing this year. But I'm just glad he's not up in the big leagues right now.
I'm pretty sure he got hurt.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just glad. Like I said, I'm glad he's not in the big leagues right now. But point being, you obviously have Witt. You have David Dahl right now, who has only had 6 at-bats, but he's done a lot in those 6 at-bats. And you have Pache. Obviously, Stubbs is not going anywhere. And is that everyone right now? Sosa.
Yeah.
That's 5 bench guys you have that are kind of mixing in spots right now. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Drew, on like how that could change once we acquire some guys, or even if we acquire like a bench bat, someone's probably going to get moved off. My personal opinion is I think Pache will probably not be here by the year's end. If he is, great. Like I love Pache. I think he does have a role in this team, but he hasn't been playing quite as well this year, even against lefties, and hasn't really taken advantage of all his opportunities. And I still think you could package him in a deal that might net you something in return, or you're gonna get more than what the A's got for him when we traded for him. That's for sure. I mean, that was an absolute fleece. But I think it was Billy Sullivan. But I think he's probably not gonna be on the roster anymore. David Dahl, he's an interesting conversation, which we'll talk about too. But I think the guys who are set in stone are Sosa, Stubbs, and
Witt.
I would be surprised if Witt would have to like do absolutely nothing until the trade deadline. I think they're a little more tied to him than they were Josh Harrison.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like you said about Pache, I mean, I think I said this in our group chat the other day. Like, you could definitely package him in a package for like Luis Robert or something like that, just to fill that center field void for the White Sox it would be in this case. But if you're trading for a center fielder, he'd be a perfect placeholder for a team that isn't looking to compete this year. And he has years of control. He's going to be cheap for that team. So he would make all the sense in the world to trade away to a team in a center fielder trade.
Definitely. Yeah, I could see that happening for sure. I think as far as David Dahl goes too, I mean, again, only had 6 at-bats, but we know what he did in AAA. And you don't have he can't hit against lefties, but that's kind of the whole point. Like you can totally hide him versus lefties. He's only going to be in the lineup when a righty is on the mound. And there's value in that because Jay Cave was that guy last year. And we were calling for an upgrade time after time for him. And it feels like in a pinch hit spot, David Dahl may be able to do some damage. I don't know if this is going to carry on throughout the next few weeks. Like, I don't know what he's going to do down the road. None of us do. But again, he was playing really well in AAA, and I know Jay Cave was too. I do understand that, but I think you see the difference with all 3 of David Dahl's hits so far have come in pretty big spots. They've all been clutch hits. Jay Cave, the only clutch hit I remember him having was we were down, 4-1 in that Little League Classic game, and he hits a 2-run home run, and we still lost the game. So not his fault there wasn't an extra runner on base, but I have a feeling with an extra runner on base, maybe he doesn't hit that home run there. And he obviously he's probably pitched a little differently, but it just felt like every time Jay Cave came up with nothing on the line, he did the most. And it felt like when he came up with everything on the line, he did the very least. And again, David Dahl, he has had 6 at-bats. I don't want to overreact to him, but I do think you are really going to closely monitor him over the next month and a half. And if he plays well, then that's one less piece you have to then try to find in a trade. You can go, you don't have to go get a left-handed bench bat. But if you can find an upgrade, sure. I'm sure we all saw the Jake McCarthy report too, which I don't know how I feel about that. We'll talk about that too.
Yeah. And I kind of want to add a little bit on the David Dahl thing. Like, you got to take into consideration, Jake Cave has no major league success, and David Dahl has been an all-star in the major leagues. So it's just a guy that's been there and done it. It's a lot different than a guy that has never been there and never done it. So you just got to take that kind of stuff into account as well. And I think the Phillies are probably going to do that. So it'll definitely be curious. It's a curious case. Like, the whole bench as a whole is just kind of weird right now because they have so many guys that are mixing in and out because of injuries or whatever it may be. So, I mean, I'm not going to look too far into it until we get a little bit closer to the deadline and these guys have a little bit more of a chance to kind of get going or get cold, whatever they're going to be for the rest of the year. And I think David Dahl's might be the answer because, like you said, he can kind of come in pinch hit situations, and it seems like he can do some damage and hit some bombs.
Yeah,
And that's really what you're looking for when you're in a pinch hit situation. Put the ball in play, and a lot of the time, if you hit the ball hard, it's good things are going to happen. And
right.
he's been known to hit the ball hard. So
And he doesn't have many opportunities left. Like he saw 9-6 plate appearances last year in the big leagues, or
yeah,
a year or two ago, whenever it was when he was with the Padres. Like he's not going to have like this. This might be his for him. Every opportunity he gets is like this might be my last. So there's value in that too, and being able to prove he can be a bench piece for this team. He's not going to waste opportunities. So obviously we'll see what the results are, but that's really the shakeup I think. The only shakeup I think we're going to see happening. Like I said, I think
yep.
Sosa, Witt, and Stubbs are locked in, and then it's really just comes down to like if they want to have 4 or 5 guys, which I feel like they've opted for 4 most years, but maybe they'll go 5 just because they have 6 starters now, so that does make a difference too. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be like you said. It's a curious case. That's a good way to put it. But I just wanted to touch on that. I could see them adding someone, and on that note, I mentioned Jake McCarthy, which I'm just not. I really wouldn't be a fan of that. I get he's younger than David Dahl, and I'm not saying like obviously, yeah, like if you could build a roster, you'd probably want a bench player like Jake McCarthy just because he's younger and has more potential. But you're not asking like David Dahl is now adjusting to being a bench player in this part of his career, whereas Jake McCarthy, he's kind of still fighting for playing time. Obviously, he's not playing every single day, I don't think, but the D-backs need to get rid of him because they have a number of left-handed hitting outfielders. Like they don't need him there, and he's playing. This is probably the best season of his career, and he's playing okay. Like he's playing a little bit above average, I guess you could say. Like it's not that exciting, and that was a very weird rumor to see. Like I don't know, it just kind of felt out of nowhere for the Phillies. That I'm sure they'll have interest there, but I don't know. Like I just don't. I don't feel great like buying high on a guy like that when he's really the only skill I see from him is the speed, and he may hit righty sometimes. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't be super excited about that, and I'd rather just keep the bench the way it is, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's not like the bench is lacking speed. Like it's not like we have guys that hit the ball in the air hard and try to hit home runs every single time, and they're slow. So I think the Phillies don't really need a guy like that. They need a guy that is going to come up and consistently give good at bats in big spots in a pinch hit situation. Yep. And that would be the only way they're going to upgrade the bench. They're not going to just take like a marginal upgrade or something like that and give up a prospect for it. So that's just kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if that is something they pursue, because I could see the Phillies getting some sort of lesser known name, not lesser known, but like, you know, smaller name like that at the deadline and just trying to get like a little help there. So I don't know. Obviously, I was waiting up until 6 p.m. last year at the deadline, and then I was rewarded by the Rodolfo Castro trade at 6 p.m. on the dot. So let's just hope that doesn't happen again. And yeah, I wanted to mention that came to mind because it felt very weird to me. So I don't know, man. I don't know. That was a weird report.
Yeah, I don't really see the fit there. So
no, not at all.
And just because they asked about him doesn't mean they're definitely interested. Like they might just be gauging what the Diamondbacks are thinking as far as prospects go, as far as what they want from us, not like what we want from them. So that's just kind of might have been what that was. And speaking of prospects, I guess we can kind of talk about Aiden Miller and George Klassen getting promoted.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those two guys, what a start to the season they've had. They've both been so good. And Aiden Miller, he's had his struggles at times, like the last 14 days, I think he's kind of been down a little bit. But overall, I mean, he's still such a good prospect, and he's going to be such a good player when he gets to the major leagues. And it's not if he gets to the major leagues, it's when, because he's just that kind of player. He's so good, and he's so young. It's going to be really exciting watching his path to the major leagues.
Yeah, and I saw, like, even with his struggles, he's down to 275, I think, on his average, but I saw his OPP was still 401. That's crazy, man. I mean, he's already got 5 bombs this year too. Like, obviously the power was already there, and that was the concern. I think it was the hamate bone. They were concerned that maybe his power wouldn't quite be there. When that's why he fell to 27 apparently. But you don't need him to hit 40 bombs a year. Like no. he's gonna be the hitter he is right now with his swing. He's gonna get better, obviously, but like that is more than okay what he's on track to do. So very exciting for him, obviously. I think he's also scored like 28 runs in 39 games with Clearwater. It was about time. Like he's ready for high A. And we've talked about it before. Like when he goes to Reading will be very interesting because he's obviously on a very fast track right now as things are going. And yeah, he may be in Reading sooner rather than later. But it seems like with the recent struggles, maybe he'll spend most of probably the rest of the year in Lakewood, which is fine. I mean, you don't need him to go up to Reading sooner than he needs to go. But as far as Classen goes too, like he got hurt and then still came back from the injury. He's still been firing it in the strike zone. I think both his ERA and WHIP are both under 1, which is just gross. that guy's been incredible. And I think Mitch Rupert tweeted out he has like similar. I don't know if you saw that tweet. Like
I did.
Similar Clearwater numbers to Cole Hamels, and I forget who the other guy was.
Andrew Painter.
Yeah, that's special stuff, man. That's exciting. Obviously, he's only going up to high A right now, but he's a really exciting prospect on the rise. I would be shocked if he's not in our like top 10, maybe more than top 10 for pipeline by the time the trade deadline rolls around. But obviously, we know he's much higher than that right now. It's just pipeline takes forever to update, and they're not always accurate. So
yeah, and he could be the 6th guy that we have in the top 100 come the end of the year because he's just that good, and he's been that good. And I think his worst case is he's a high leverage reliever at this point because he's got such electric stuff. His fastball is like 98, 99, and it's so electric. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just so good.
Yeah, 57 strikeouts to 12 walks this year so far. You don't see that too often.
Yeah, he's so good. He's in the zone. He has nasty stuff, and that's a recipe for success, especially that low in the minors.
Yep, correct. Yeah. It's really, really exciting to see those two guys, and I know they're going to be playing up in Lakewood too. A lot more fans locally will get to go out to those games as well, which is nice. And yeah, it's just an exciting time with the prospects, man. You know, it'll be interesting. And obviously we talked trades last podcast, and that's been a big topic of conversation as of late. And obviously that's going to be what a lot of the Phillies discourse is over the next couple months is which of these guys would you trade? Which of these guys would you not? Like, where are you at with some of these guys in the system? And there's not many of them I would like love to trade right now. And these two guys are pretty close to untouchable. Like Classen may be in the right deal, but it would have to be for someone pretty big. And Miller, like there's no world where I would trade him this year. Like absolutely not. That's not happening. We haven't had a hitter like that in a system in quite some time. So yeah, it's very exciting, man. Very, very exciting to see those two guys where they are now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's we can kind of talk about them all day if we want to, but going to go back to the major league team for a minute here and talk about the starting rotation because, man, they're the best in Major League Baseball, and it's not really even close at this point. They're so reliable every single night. They're going to give you 5+ innings at least, and they're going to be high quality innings unless Taijuan Walker goes out there and decides he doesn't want to play baseball for a night and gets pulled in the 3rd inning.
But, does happen from time to time.
Yeah. The top 4 in the rotation, though, they are simply just best top 4 in baseball, and it's not really a competition. I mean, the Mariners are good, but they're not this good. And it's just so special to watch, and I expect huge things out of these guys down the stretch. For
sure. And I know we talk about Sanchez a lot. I know I talk about him a lot, man, but it feels like he's really developing into and we've talked about this in our group chat too. He's developing into a very special pitcher, man. Like,
yeah,
the fact that he is now up to 97, 96, and he hasn't, again, I said this before, that he hasn't lost anything. That's really, really freaking awesome. And he's just like, it feels like he might be more than number 4 down the road, man. It's starting to feel like that. I don't want to jump the gun. He's got a long way to go, but like, if he's able to hone in the control and command a little bit more, just a little bit, not really even the control. Like I think he's got pretty good control of his pitches, but just like not have those games where he's a little bit off. Man, I mean, I think he's going to have one of like the year Rangers having right now. I could see Sanchez having one of those types of years in like a couple years or so. And I'm like, he's the guy who I'm just super excited about. It just feels like he's really finding his groove right now where we're at right now. And it feels like he's definitely going to go more than the 2 1/3 innings or 2 2/3 he went in the playoff game last year. Like, I think he's going to turn in a really good playoff start. And that's what really makes his rotation what it is him being such a strong number 4. He would be a number 2 in a number of rotations right now. So
yeah,
it's really cool going into this Fenway series too. I think I've talked about this before, but the only time I went to Fenway, Nola got scratched that day. It was one of the COVID games in 2021. He got scratched. Brandon Kinsler started the game. Gave up a bomb in the first inning. It was really just the opener. But they called up Chris Sanchez that day to then pitch that game, and I believe he went like 2 2/3 or 3 1/3, something in that ballpark. And he pitched really, really well that day for having just been called up from Lehigh Valley up to Boston. And that was where you kind of started to see his potential a little bit. And now it's kind of full circle to where like you see where he was then, where he was just a depth option for the major league team in the rotation. Like he was like, if you just need a guy to eat innings, that's the guy you're going to call up. And now to see where he is a few years later, where he's like one of the better pitchers on the major league roster, and on a number, like one of the better pitchers in baseball right now, like not one of the best, but definitely one of the better pitchers in baseball right now. That's really cool to see, kind of like a full circle moment there. And we had someone, I think it was Sir Philly, commented on one of our posts about how they were talking about Mason Miller, who I'll say this again. I said it before the stream. Zero chance we get Mason Miller. It's just not going to happen. But I love the guy, but like the Phillies, there's just no way they're going to be able to afford that. I think he mentioned, and I don't know where this report came from, so take it with a grain of salt, like that someone mentioned Sanchez being part of the deal, and he agreed he didn't want Sanchez as a part of it. But like, if anyone calls asking for Chris Sanchez, I'm hanging up the phone immediately. There's no way I'm getting rid of that guy. He's got sky high potential, in my opinion, with the stuff he's got now, and the changeup was already one of the better pitches in baseball. I haven't looked at the numbers on the slider, but it feels like it's getting better for sure. I believe the numbers weren't the best to start the year, but it feels like it's definitely becoming more of a formidable pitch. I just wanted to, I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but like I really wanted to hammer home that Chris Sanchez is really, really becoming a special pitcher right now, and I'm excited about him moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything else to add on that. You kind of covered everything. So, I mean, I'll just talk about another guy. Like Aaron Nola's quietly off to one of the best starts of his career, and man, it's so like gratifying because I know we both love Nola, and almost everybody loves Nola. I mean, there's people that hate him because of the bad years the Phillies had or whatever it may be, and whatever. I don't even care. But like he's been so good this year, and outside of that first game against the Braves, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. I mean, you can say that about the top 4 pitchers in this rotation. Like one of the best pitchers in baseball, one of the best pitchers in baseball. Like it's been so good, and they're so consistent. Like I said, they go out there every single time, and you got like a 90% chance of winning the games when these 4 guys are on the mound because they're just that good.
And I think it's been a quietly good season for Nola because the haters haven't had anything to say. And that's usually the people leading the Nola discourse, unfortunately. But I mean, he's been even better. Like, so, and again, I don't want to jinx him. Like he's still got a long way to go, but like he's had the even year thing where it was like 2022, he was really good. 2020, he was really good. He's been almost like back to where he was. I don't want to say he's in his Cy Young candidacy form right now, but like, it's not far off of it.
He's up there.
It's closer to that than it is 2022, in my opinion. He's been really good. Even his like not so great starts, like he really hasn't had that blow up start this year just yet. And that's usually the complaint with him is that when he has a bad night, he's going to give up 4 or 5 or maybe 6 runs from time to time. And he's had one start where he's given up. It was the first start of the year where he gave up more than 4 runs. It was the 6-run start, and then he had one other start where he gave up 4 runs. So outside of that, everything's been 3 or less. And for the most part, it's been 2 or less. So Nolas has been really fun to watch this year, man. And like you said, you and me are both big Nola guys, and we were glad the deal got done this offseason too. I know a lot of people, not a lot, but there was a good portion of people who were very angry about that deal. And it's looking pretty good in the first year of that contract.
Yeah, I mean, he should age like fine wine, like I said to you the other day, because he doesn't throw the ball fast. Like he doesn't rely on velocity at all, and his off speed is kind of what he lives by. I mean, his fastball is obviously really, really good because he locates it so well, and he's done it for years now. And you don't just lose command over time. I mean, it just doesn't happen. You lose velocity, definitely. I mean, even if he's throwing 91, I feel good about it because I know he's going to locate it up in the zone, down in the zone, away from righties, away from lefties, whatever it may be. He can locate it.
Yeah, 22 inches a run is hard to compete with when you're a hitter. I mean, that's just when you got Mason Miller one night and then you got Aaron Nola another night with that pitch. I mean, hitting's hard, man. Hitting's really hard, and Nola makes it tough on those guys too. Yeah,
and like I guess we can talk about the other good guy at the top of the rotation. He's all right. You might have heard of him. His name's Zach Wheeler. I mean, that guy, he's just simply one of the best, if not the best starting pitcher in baseball. And it's been so fun watching him grow the last few years because that first contract he signed with the Phillies, everybody was like, what the heck are they doing, man? Like, this guy's never had a full season of success in his career, and look at him now. I mean, he's been top 5 pitcher in baseball for the last 5 years.
The Phillies are onto something with the pitchers they acquire and the pitchers they're interested in, because I think
No
we've
doubt.
talked about it in our group chat. I know I mentioned the group chat a ton, but there's a lot of good conversations that happen in there. So join our Discord. But regardless, a little self promo there. But like we've talked about, they were interested in Tarek Skubal a couple years ago. Look what that guy's doing this year. Like the Phillies know what they're doing when it comes to pitching and who they want to acquire and who they want in the building. Caleb Cotham is incredible, but they also have a front office staff that they know what to look for in pitchers too. I can't pinpoint, like I don't know what that scouting process looks like for when they're looking for trade targets or guys across the league. I couldn't tell you, but I know they're doing something right when it comes to that because of the way these guys are performing right now and because of how well that Wheeler contract aged. I liked the deal at the time. I can't say I was with some of the people who were like, man, what a great contract. Like I was like, it was a little bit of an overpay, but you need a number 2 to Nola. Yeah, that contract aged much better than that. And I was one of the people who was probably a little more optimistic than most I wasn't even going to argue the people who were upset with it because you didn't know if he was going to be A, healthy, and you didn't know if B, he was going to be truly a number 2 to Nola back then. And obviously he's the ace now. So that took care of itself, and he earned himself $42 million a year over the next 3, which is really exciting. And he signed it for 3 years. So
and in that contract, he pitched like the second most innings in baseball or something like that. Like
he's been pretty healthy.
The health has been insanely good, and obviously being a good pitcher, pitching deep into games has helped his innings. But I think he's only missed 1 start that I can remember, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years. So he's just the ultimate, like the pinnacle of reliability and consistency. Mm-hmm. It's just been so insane. Like you said, I don't know what they look for in these pitchers, but if they want them, I want them. That's pretty much where I'm at. Like if they get a guy, I'm like, okay, I don't even really know anything about this guy, but if they got him, I'm confident in it.
Yeah. It's like Hoffman. When they picked up him, I was like, I don't even know who that is, but whatever. But
yeah, I mean, so I think it was Matt Winkelman or somebody like that, that said it. But I think Caleb Cotham is probably the most important person in the entire organization outside of like Dave Dombrowski. I mean, it's so crazy how good he's been for us. And if they let him leave at any point, it's going to be just a tragedy because he's done wonders for this entire organization, whether it's just the pitchers or everybody in general. I mean, he seems like he's just loved by everybody.
Yeah. I would hope like 20 years from now when, people our age are having kids or whatever it is, I would hope that Caleb Cotham is still the pitching coach of the Philadelphia Phillies. Like I really hope that the next couple of generations get to see that guy coaching up Phillies pitchers because there's something special going on there. I forget who said that. I know what you're talking about. I want to say maybe there could have been multiple people who said it too. I want to say Fritz has said that before as well. But man, Cotham's just the man. I mean, and he just seems like a chill guy too. Like it seems like none of these coaches, it seems like they're uptight or anything. Like they've all got a good vibe in the clubhouse right now. And it's really funny that some of them came over with Joe Girardi, which it seemed like the vibe was complete opposite when he was here. So obviously Rob came with Gabe Kapler, which is even more of a weird story that he came over back then and he stuck around for so long. And obviously he was almost going to retire, but it's just really crazy. We're sitting here with how all the staff got here, like through different paths, and having them all together at once, from Dave to Ali Kalambi to Preston Mattingly to Brian Barber, like all these guys in the front office. I'm probably forgetting names. Down to then Kevin Long, Caleb Cotham, and Rob Thompson, and all these guys in the dugout too, man. It's crazy that we have all these guys right here at the same time, and it's worked out about as good as you could expect it to.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And it's kind of like not the exact same thing, but it's like kind of like what the Braves have built in the last 6 or 7 years. They've been super good every single year, and their coaching staff is mostly stuck together outside of who was it that went to the Angels?
Oh, was it Kranitz or
no? He's the manager of the Angels.
Ron Washington.
Yeah, Ron Washington. I think he was their third base. He was their third base coach, and he was like one of the most respected in the league, obviously. And he got a manager job, and he left. So, I mean, outside of that, though, the Braves, they've been one of the best teams in baseball the last 6 or 7 years. I think they've won 6 straight NL East titles or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah,
it's crazy.
their rebuild ended a little quicker than ours, unfortunately. That was
Yeah.
really frustrating watching them win it over us with Gabe Kapler. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen this year as the banner gets pulled up. And they definitely are not having a good time right now. I think they're 18-22 in the last 40, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely struggling without a couple of their best players. And unfortunately, Marcell Ozuna can't be the whole lineup over there. And he's still playing pretty well. But yeah, we've talked about the Braves a bunch this year. They're not playing the best baseball right now. They just lost to the Nationals. They got swept by the Nationals. Is that what happened?
3 out of 4.
3 out of 4. So pretty close. Not a great look, and it doesn't seem like they're hitting their stride. I think they will have a hot streak at some point. They're obviously still going to make the playoffs because, once again, the National League is pretty awful outside of the top 3 or 4 teams. But they don't look like they have the past couple of years. And obviously, you're not going to when your best pitcher and your best hitter. I know Acuna wasn't playing that well this year, but let's be real, like probably best player. He's an MVP. When those two guys aren't on the field, things are going to look different. But even before that, like we did take the division lead before Acuna went down too. And they were still struggling even back then. So I think the Phillies, like it would take a pretty drastic collapse for them to lose this division lead. And again, there's not a lot of good teams in the National League. So it would be very surprising if they lost that lead. And again, we've talked about this a number of times. It's just going to be really cool to see them win the pennant on the field this year. Like I hope it happens at Citizens Bank Park. That would be a special moment if they got to do it at home because we haven't had that since 2011. And that used to be really awesome every year watching them clinch the division on their home turf and just seeing the celebrations. Like I remember the clip from 2007 when Brett Myers closed it out and how loud that crowd was because it had been so long since they won the division, I think. And even thinking back to 2011 with Hunter Pence and, they traded for him at the deadline. And even back then when it was the norm the past four years or so. But it was just like, wow, they've done it again. And now they've won 102 games. This is an incredible accomplishment. Obviously that season didn't end the way they wanted it to, but it would be really cool to see them win it on their home turf. And, if it takes them losing a couple games away to get back home and clinch it on the home turf, by all means. But it seems like it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, and it just doesn't seem like the Braves are going to be picking up that much steam to be able to catch us because their starting pitching is just quite frankly terrible. I mean, outside of Chris Sale this year and who's the
Fried?
No, the guy, he has like a 1.9 ERA.
Oh, Reynaldo Lopez?
Yeah, Reynaldo Lopez. Right? Yeah. But he's already more innings than he was last year in the last couple years.
Reliever last year, right?
Right. Yeah, I believe so. And I just don't see him sustaining that success all year, obviously. And obviously, Sale and Fried are both really good. That's a given. But you can't be too deep in your rotation. You just can't. And the Braves, they have no depth. We knew that coming into the year. And now that they're down a couple guys, like it's been a total disaster for them. And obviously, Bryce Elder was not good this year, so they sent him down. So they basically lost 2 starting pitchers because Elder went down to the minor leagues and Strider got hurt. So it's just been.
And Spencer Schwellenbach didn't pitch too well in his first couple starts, I don't think. They called him up from Double-A. Like he was pitching well in Double-A, but that's where they're at. They called up their number 3 prospect from Double-A probably earlier than they should have, and it didn't work out too well.
Yeah, they just don't. They don't have the pitching to catch the Phillies this year, I don't think, and I just don't foresee it happening. And I think the Phillies, like I don't care what anybody says, having that bye in the first round of the playoffs is a big advantage because you get to set up your rotation, and when your rotation's as good as the Phillies, I mean, just kind of speaks for itself. So they're dangerous whenever they have their pitching lined up correctly, and that's exactly what's going to happen in the playoffs this year.
And look, you have 2 days off before that first London game, and it didn't affect them at all. So obviously they're going to have a little more time off than a couple days if they get that first round bye. And in all likelihood, they will play the Braves. So it would also be hilarious if we got the bye and then beat them in the first round while having the bye after they complained about how it was a disadvantage. I mean, that would be the ultimate, like, you guys are just full of excuses. Like it would just be the ultimate, like, I don't even know. I don't know what to call it, but I would love that. I mean, would be hilarious, would be so sweet in the moment too. And Braves fans would truly not, like, they would be pulling up all the 2021 pictures with the trophy once again, because that's all they know how to do. So that would be that would be great if we could take them down. And again, like I said, it looks like that's going to happen because I would guess we'll probably be the 1 seed again. A lot of time, like the Dodgers could certainly take that from us, but it looks like we're on track to be the 1 seed as of right now. I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Again, we're doing this without guys healthy right now. Trey and Marsh are not in the lineup. So if we are the 1 seed, I would be shocked if the Braves aren't the first wild card team, in which case I believe it's 1 gets the winner of 4 and 5. Is that how it goes? Or
I think so, yeah. It's complicated, but still.
Yeah, we're not in playoff mode regardless right now, but man, would that be sweet to just that would be sweet.
I'd love it.
Braves a 3rd year in a row on those terms too.
Yep, and I'd love it even more if they got eliminated before they got to us, because then they don't have that excuse that you get to keep the momentum or whatever.
They like lose to the Cubs or something. Shota Imanaga throws an absolute gem in game 1 of a wild card. That would be sweet. Yeah, that would be even better, honestly, if they thought they were going to get the playoffs and 3rd time was going to be a charm and they don't even get there.
Yep, it would be hilarious, that's for sure.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean that's enough talking about the Braves. I hate talking about the Braves, but I just love how bad they are right now. It's been fun to watch.
No, it's sweet,
I guess
man.
we can kind of preview the Boston series a little bit. I guess we can put up the starting pitching here.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to feel good about all 3 of these games. Nick Pivetta, I mean, come on now. He did just dice up the Braves the other day, but
yeah, he did.
The Braves lineup has been terrible, other than Marcell Ozuna, and I think he's cooled off a little bit recently. I mean, Tanner Houck's good, but Aaron Nola is better. So, I mean, you got to win 2 out of 3 here, I think.
Absolutely, and I think that's fair. Like, I'm not expecting a sweep necessarily. Cutter Crawford's Linsanity run is kind of over now. He's still pitching well, obviously, on the year, but I think you should win that first game for sure off a pitching matchup.
Yeah.
Second matchup, I would sure hope you win that game. Chris Sanchez versus Nick Pivetta. I would be just like from like a Phillies standpoint, I would be very upset if you lost that game to Nick Pivetta. I actually the last time they were in Fenway, I witnessed Ronald Torreyes take Nick Pivetta deep over the Green Monster in that game. So a sight to behold there, but hopefully something like that happens again. I would love it. I don't know. I'd love if Sosa did something like that, but obviously, also the Monster is going to pose some interesting challenges for the Phillies. It's always tough adjusting to that in left field. That whole outfield completely changes the way you play the game. So I'm sure they're going to catch some tough breaks there, but I'm sure the Red Sox will too. Even if you play there most of the year, there's still going to be some times where the bounces don't break your way in that outfield. So that's something to watch as well, obviously, it always is when you go to Boston. But the 3rd game, like the Thursday game, is the one where I think we would probably drop it. Not because of Nola or anything, just because if we do win the first 2, obviously Boston's going to want to win the 3rd one. They're not going to want to get swept in their own ballpark. And Tanner Houck, like you said, is very, very good. So that could be one where we just even if Nola pitches well, maybe the offense isn't quite there. But obviously with the Phillies, it doesn't always work out, or in baseball, it doesn't always work out like you plan with the pitching matchup. So we may lose one of the first 2 and then win the next 2. I don't know. But I would expect 2 out of 3 as well. And I think the Phillies will take 2 out of 3. And we'll get a good look at potential trade target Tyler O'Neill. Every year, always trade target for the Phillies. But
he just got hurt again.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, came back from the
IL.
This
guy can't get the break. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. He just came back off the IL, too.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, man. You got to be joking.
But, kind of an interesting thing for the series will be Nick Castellanos in right field, because that right field is just massive, and maybe they give him a couple days of DH, play Schwarber in left, and put like somebody faster in right field. I'm not sure, but you're going to be losing a lot of defense with Castellanos out there, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that will be interesting. That's a good point. I didn't think about that too. There's a little more ground to cover out there. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Again, like I said, I already took a subtle jab at Castellanos at the start of the podcast, so I won't get on him too much. But man, what a terrible at bat to end that game. Oh my goodness. I'm not going to get into it, but it was a bad at bat. 89-mile-an-hour cutter right down the pipe to start the at bat, and you foul it back. Yeah, and then you swing at every pitch of the at bat, and that's the result. And people are like, "Well, man, maybe it was." I know there were people in the. I looked at the Phillies Instagram page after the last, or he was commenting about something with that play. He was like talking about maybe he should have like kicked the ball or something. Which maybe that would have worked out actually, because then you only have the one out and you prolong the game for one more out. But there were people defending him in those comments too. And like, I get it. The game yesterday, totally more on the bullpen than Castellanos, but man, to end the game that way, I know it was a good play by the catcher. It just it irks me seeing an at-bat like that to end the game. But regardless, like you said, as far as the right field goes, that's certainly something to consider. I'm curious to see if they will change it up. My gut tells me they'll just kind of keep it the same since it's a 3-game series. But I also saw the Phillies haven't won a season series there. Like, they've won series, but they haven't won a season series, I think, in against Boston since 2011. So obviously they don't play them that much, but they've tied a number of them. It'd be nice to win the next couple games because I don't think you see them the rest of the year. So I would love to finally have a season series win over Boston. I have some friends who are Boston fans, so it'd be nice to be able to talk about that a little bit. But anyway,
yeah,
I'm just rambling at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we pretty much covered everything we were looking to cover. I mean, we're right about an hour right now, so might be a good time to cut it off. But I mean, if you have any last second thoughts, go right ahead.
No, I don't think so, man. I mean, I'm very excited for upcoming month. Obviously, in a month from now, we're going to be at the All-Star break, so a lot to monitor over the next month, like we talked about with the bullpen and the bench, especially. And I'm excited to see how the series plays out with. Obviously, the pitching matchups are pretty solid. Like, even Pivetta and Crawford are still pretty good pitchers. So should be a fun series, man. And I would hope they get 2 out of 3. But obviously, a lot of traveling as of late. So if they do lose the series, that could be a factor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be too down in the dumps if it was a series because Boston's. I mean, they've been average the last handful of years, but they can win a series against anybody pretty much at any time. So I'm not going to be too upset about it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. No, I don't have anything else to add. Anything you want to say before we wrap up, Drew?
Nope, I think I'm all good.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We did a longer pod today. Obviously, the one the other day was just kind of a quick recap of the London series and where things were at, but we wanted to kind of cover everything that has been going on lately in this one. So we thank you guys for watching. Again, check out the Discord. Keep in touch on the community tab too. A lot of good comments on that lately, and we'll be starting to post shorter clips of the pods too, so you guys can just check those out. But thank you guys so much again for all the support. God bless y'all, and we will see you guys on the next one after this series. Peace.